This is Chad from Gay Babe TV, and he's been on YouTube for over 9 years now, and this guy is an expert when it comes to brand deals on YouTube, on Instagram. Every time I talk to Chad, he is blowing my mind with here's how it works, here's what the processes are, here's the negotiations, here's how we do contracts, here's how we start the conversation. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like we need to get this on video. So today, Chad wants to unload his brain into yours to give you a crash course, everything you need to know about brand deals on YouTube, how to land them, how to make money, and grow your audience doing it all at the same time. Hey guys, my name is Tim Schmoyer. Welcome to Video Creators, where we are all about helping you guys as established YouTube creators know how to take next level steps and tactics to grow your business and your audience here on YouTube. And Chad's been doing that for a long time. So take us back to the beginning. Your very first brand deal. How did that come about? Where were you guys as a channel, and how that feels just going through that whole process?
Well, kind of embarrassing, but so we were, I would say at this point we were 2014 maybe, and we got offered our first brand deal, and it was for an app called Hot or Not. We'll move on from that quickly. It was really dumb for us to even do it, but we had fun with it. They paid us like $500. We were excited. You know, it was pretty exciting, and
go from 0 to 500.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it was $500 to sit on the couch and talk about something. Yeah. So little do we know that you know, from that point on, it just would kind of floodgates would open, and we would just get this crash course, you know, of on-the-job training of dealing with brands.
So here you are 9 years later. I'm putting you on the spot for some numbers. How many brand deals would you say you've done overall in the past 9 years?
We've worked with over 800 brands, and I would say that we're probably close to double that in brand deals.
Okay. So you've done multiple deals with each brand?
Yes.
And what are some of the brands, name drop some?
You know, we've worked with Samsung, Honda, Hyundai, you know, the HelloFreshes of the world, you know, all the kind of Sunbasket, those type of deals. We've worked with Harry's, the shaving, you know, that I worked with them probably 40 times for a long time. Walmart in various ways, including some national Walmart commercials. We did 9 commercials with them.
Wow.
And then some social as well. Target's, JCPenney, Disney, Kraft Mac and Cheese. And we could go all day. I mean, it's been an absolute blessing to think about all of those brands. If you know, we've grew up on them, and now all of a sudden we've worked with them in a business capacity. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. How do these brands find you?
Majority of the time when brands reach out to us, it's not the brand, it's an agency. You know, what I've noticed is over the years now, brands are using their agencies that maybe helped with their marketing or their PR stuff, and even reaching out to celebrity, you know, clients to get, you know, commercials, traditional commercials and things of that sort. Now what they've done, I think they've got a whole nother arm now that they've added for working with influencers. And so they have teams that are literally just watching YouTube, searching through Instagram, searching Facebook, and they you know, they've reached out and say, hey, we saw your guys' content on YouTube, or we saw you on Facebook or Instagram. We think you'd be perfect for this campaign.
So is there anything that you would say that you would recommend that would make their content more likely that a brand would either discover them, and then if they do get discovered, would make it more likely that the brand would reach out to contact them in the first place?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that it does start with putting out content that is brand safe.
And what does that mean?
So what I mean by that is content that, you know, a brand like, for instance, let's use Disney, is not going to reach out to someone that is putting out content with cuss word after cuss word, sexual references, things that's risque, because that's not their brand. Right?
But there's other brands that might be.
Exactly. So if it's your kind of content, if that's what you want to do, then follow your heart, do your thing, but understand that there are going to be certain brands that aren't necessarily going to reach out. When you're smaller, and if we would have known that, this would be something I probably would have told myself, you know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, to reach out to brands. We have never reached out to a brand. Not in 9 years. They've all come to you.
Yeah,
they've all come to us, which, you know, you could be like, that's cool, but then you also could be like, man, maybe we missed some opportunities here. But I think that smaller channels, if you have a smaller channel, and I think that, you know, you're growing that and you want to work with brands, I mean, I think that it's absolutely okay for you to create yourself a media kit, create yourself a little, here's what I am, here's who I am, here's what I could, you know, offer you, and send it off. The worst they're going to do is not respond or say that, you know, we're not interested right now. But The other side of that is you might be able to get a product for some content.
If you guys want to know more about how to create a media kit, there's an interactive card pop up or a link down below where I walk you through step by step what a media deck looks like and how you use that to reach out to brands. I've had experience several times of reaching out to brands like, oh, I just want to work with them because they seem cool. And I've been surprised how many times now, especially more recently, those brands have been like, we've been wanting to get into influencer marketing and we just weren't sure where to start. Thank you for reaching out.
Absolutely.
Like, how do we do this thing? And then you get to be in the position of teaching them and showing them. And so it's kind of like they literally thank us for reaching out.
You know, I think the biggest thing with brand deals is in the beginning, it's okay to do things for no money. The opportunities are gonna come from there.
And then you have something to show the brand that wants to pay you. Like, hey, I've done this before.
That's what I've done.
Here's an example. And they're like, oh, yeah, that looks awesome. Like, you did a great job. Cool. Yeah, you're worth $500.
Exactly. And I think that, and with rates, it's another piece that valuing yourself is important. You know, you're going to do some research. You can look at, there's some tools out there. And I think it's important that people, do that research and then understand that, you might get negotiated down or it might be, you might not get paid what you want, but never come in and say, hey, I'll accept $2 for this. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
When they would have paid you $5.
Yeah, I literally just did a deal with my wife for a local brand that was like, hey, will you do this deal? And we're like, yeah, we love your stuff. Like, we would be happy to. They're like, sure, cool. We'll send you some free stuff and you take the videos and the photos and we're like, whoa. And this is where we're at, like not where you should start at, like Chad said. But we were like, no, we usually charge around $5,000 for this type of thing, and because we've done like PNC Bank and Google, and that's kind of the rate for our audience that we've been charging. And they're like, oh, okay, and they came back at like, they kind of met us a little more than halfway. Yeah. And so we were like, oh, okay, we just really want to work with you, and that sounds fine.
Yeah, exactly.
But when is that point? Like you said at the beginning, do some free ones. When does that pivot happen from free to paid?
I think there's a few factors. So the first factor is this a return? If you've done one review for free and they come back to you. If they're coming to you, then this is where I think you have a little bit more negotiating power. Start low. Like, hey, if you want a YouTube video, just throw a number out there, like $500 and I'll do it plus the product. The worst thing that could happen is, obviously them not wanting to work with you, but that's probably not going to happen unless you say, you know what, $10,000. When you have enough likes or views where you can take your top 10 videos, add them together, and then divide by 10 and get a decent average number of views or likes, then I think that's where you have some negotiating power.
There's so many variables to consider when it comes to pricing and negotiating and when to go from free to paid and charging for this. Some of those factors would be things like the size of your audience. Like you're literally selling eyeballs. Like you're a media company in this regard where an advertiser wants to get in front of the people whose attention that you command. But there's other things to consider too, such as how authoritative is your voice in this niche or industry? How much do people trust and respect your opinion when you recommend something? There's also things of like, well, how badly do you just want to work with this company? If you're like, hey, we just want to go to Disney for free, you don't have to pay us like that, you could do that.
Absolutely.
As opposed to just like, no, we don't go to Disney unless they pay us. And that might be different. It could, just be your personal preference on that. I found for brand deals that we don't do very many here at Video Creators because we have our own products and services that we sell, and I just prefer to do our own integrations for our own stuff. But when we do brand deals, I charge like way higher than most people because another variable is like what's worth your time. And I know, like, if I promote something of my own, this is approximately what it will convert at. This is around how much money it will make. And so if a brand says, like, we want to take that opportunity that you would take, Tim, and we want you to insert us instead. I'm like, okay, but it's got to come at least to this number or it doesn't make sense for me. And most brands balk at that. They're like, how could you even charge? Well, take it or leave it. I don't care. So it depends on like how much pressure you feel to take it. It depends on like what your business model is as well. There's just so many things that you have to consider just personally. What is it worth to you? What do you think your audience is worth? Your voice is worth? I did one deal with a whole bunch of, it was a brand that worked with a whole bunch of creators. And they said, after the campaign was over, they said, Tim, you are the smallest channel that we worked with, but your audience converted 18 times higher than the largest channel we work with. Yeah. And so there's also this variable of how well can you sell? Just pitching a product doesn't mean that your audience is actually going to buy it, but because I have my own products that I sell, I know what you guys respond to. I know what you don't respond to. I know, like, and so they came back and they're like, Tim, you are absolutely worth that higher price because my conversion was so much higher. It sounds like what we're saying is just like when you feel like you're ready to do it, just do it.
I mean, do your research. I mean, Google is limitless in what you can learn. You know, I mean, there's resources. I mean, you literally can say, hey, how much should I charge for an Instagram post with this much, following? What I'll kind of give you a formula that I feel like is fair, and a formula that I think is somewhat close to what media agencies are using in bigger advertising, is a cost per view. Once you start getting some traction, take your likes or take your views and then times them by from anywhere from 8 to 20 cents per view. It'll give you a rate that I think is pretty fair. And then as you go, you're going to start feeling more comfortable in increasing that.
I've heard some people say never take their first offer. Is that what you're saying?
100%.
Okay. Yeah. So they come
now, unless it's great. Maybe you've worked with them before, right?
Yeah.
And they come in with a great offer. There's no point in trying to get more because they're being fair.
What if it comes in, like the first offer is already much higher than you were thinking? You're like, I'll do it for $200, and it comes in for like $1,000.
Oh, yeah.
Would you like, oh.
You say, nope, sounds good, thanks.
You just take it. Okay.
Because sometimes brands don't want to do the negotiating with you. They want you, and that's it. So they're going to come in. I mean, there's been times where brands have come to us and said, hey, we want you to do this and this, and we'll pay you $15,000. And I go back and say, no, that's worth $30,000. And then we'll usually settle maybe at that $25,000. But there's been times where they really want us. We know, like, they don't even want to negotiate. The time's quick. They want to make it happen. Yeah. And they'll come and say, look, we'll offer you $35,000 right now.
You're like, okay,
perfect.
Sure. Right.
Send the contract. In the beginning, there'll be some brands that do reach out and say, hey, we want, we'll pay you this, but we want this many views. We don't do that. Like, that's something that I recommend you don't do that. Do never guarantee views, likes, engagement, anything. This is social media.
Don't ever buy them to inflate the
Do never buy them. And that's even worse.
Terrible.
Exactly.
For your channel and for your reputation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that understand that your job is not to guarantee anything other than high quality content posted on time, on target. That's the only requirement, the only thing that you should ever guarantee. Never how much engagement it's going to get, because it's social media.
Do you have any tips or advice for the negotiating process when you don't want to come across as greedy? Yeah. How do you navigate the relational aspect of it with the brand while also earning what you're worth, and how does that dance? Any tips and advice for that?
When it comes to negotiating, what you have to realize is that it's not personal. It's a business talking to a business. It doesn't have to be difficult if you're upfront and transparent. And people will say, that's a little bit too high. I mean, there's many times where I'll give them a rate and they're like, well, that's a little higher than our budget. I'm like, well, you probably should raise your budget.
I say it flat out, just like that?
Then you probably should raise your budget if you want to work with us. I'm not, not being difficult, but I just know our value.
How do you get to the point where you have the confidence and guts to say something like that? I said, oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I think that, I've always been a blunt person. I think that it helps if you're a blunt person. But I'm also a man of faith. I know that we're not coming from a greedy place. I know that we're not trying to get over on anybody. So I believe that, when I'm coming at someone, I let them know that my value means everything to me. And I also confirm with them, and that I know that your value means everything to you. The brand's value means everything to them. We're not going to undervalue you, the brand, and we just don't want to be undervalued either. So I have to hold true to this. If you want to work with me, then let's figure out a way to make it happen.
Has that ever damaged the relationship with the brand when you play a little bit more what feels like hardball? Or you're like, no, because they expect it, and if you don't do that, it almost looks like you don't really know what you're doing.
Honestly, it has never backfired. There's been a few times where brands have said, well, unfortunately, we don't have a budget right now, but we're going to, we'll reach back out to you if we have anything that's more in line. And 9 times out of 10, they've reached out later with a brand deal that was the right fit and the right budget. Okay. Because they respect the professionalism and they respect the fact that you are a business.
You said that you do the deals. Your wife, she's like the primary personality. You're in the content. You're there, more of like a supporting character.
Yeah, absolutely. She's the main character, and
And so is she the one that the brands typically want to work with, not you?
Yeah, I would say that 70% of the time they're wanting to work with Gabrielle.
So the advantage that you guys have then, and I did this too, which is if she's the one doing the negotiating, that relationship feels a little bit weird. But with the middleman in there, you can play hardball a little bit more, and it doesn't impact their perceived relationship with her. And the same with me. This was a few years ago. I had someone negotiating and doing all my brand deals and contracts. He was able, even though he was taking a cut now of those deals, he was able to negotiate much higher because they had this perceived relationship with me from being on camera and with my wife, but they didn't have one with him. And so I feel like if there is an opportunity, whether it's just a friend or like it doesn't have to be a professional manager or anything like that.
Not at all.
Someone who just be like, hey, someone who really believes in what you're doing on YouTube, really loves your vision, and has the guts to just be like, I'm going to get my friend the best deal possible in exchange for like a 10, 20, 15%, like whatever, 50, 50, it doesn't really matter, percent cut, then you can command a higher price for it, and it saves your relationship.
Absolutely, yeah, that's perfect.
When it comes to contracts, tell us what are the main things that a creator should look for in those contracts. And I want to preface all of this by saying I think that whatever you pay, you need to have a lawyer. For me, I remember some of my first contracts, I paid a lawyer. It was a couple $100s to do the contract review, but he saved me so much headache because it was like I read it, I thought I knew what it said, but he's like, but Tim, here's what's not written in here. That's actually more important than what is written in here. You need to add this and have them add that. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. So I would personally recommend that you always go through them with a lawyer. And I think you guys have a lawyer that helps you with your contract reviews.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. I came from a world where I was looking at government contracts, but coming to the influencer world, working in the marketing areas is much different because then you're talking about the not only creating the content but also like using my likeness. Basically, what that means is that they'll put a paragraph in there that the brand can use your likeness in relation to the campaign that you've done with them. But what they'll do is they'll add a bunch of ways that they can use your likeness, and how they can use it and when they can use it, where they can use it, and they'll try how long they can use it, and they'll try to sneak in a bunch of print, TV, ad, digital, all this extra stuff that, believe me, you should be compensated for. Use is the name of that paragraph, or use, or just a way that they can, interact with your content.
What would you recommend they should negotiate for that paragraph?
TV is usually off the table unless they're willing to pay for TV use. I mean, TV use is just that. It's TV use. I mean, they're wanting to put your content or your face on national TV or even local TV. It doesn't really matter. And that's another rate at some point, if that goes in there, you'll need to talk about. A lot of times the brand will send you the contract, and it'll be to you when it should be to your company or your LLC, or, for us, we have a S Corp, so you should pay attention to that. For me, it's easier to funnel everything through the company for tax purposes later for the CPA. It's easier there, but make sure all of that information is accurate. Then you're going to go into exclusivity as something that's very important. And what I mean by that is they're going to ask you to be exclusive to that brand or to them for a certain period of time. Like a standard exclusivity rate for me is 30 days. Like we'll do 30 days with no extra fee.
With no other brand or just no other competing brand?
Competing brand. Yeah, and it's only going to be competing in that product category.
So if it was like a product, if you're doing something with Target, you say, we'll say no to Walmart for 30 days.
Exactly.
But if Canon comes along and say, well, you're a camera, like that's not a competing category.
Exactly. So and even deeper, this is where so even if if it's a Target campaign and you're working in clothing, the product category of clothing of Target, Walmart comes to you and they want to work in electronics. I'm going to do that. So I'm going to make sure that Target's not trying to lock me up to Target as a whole, to Walmart as a whole, because you need to pay for that.
Right.
So product category of the exclusivity is very important to pay attention to, and that's something that early in our time, that bit us a few times, but I look for that stuff now. So their compensation, make sure it's appropriate to what you guys agreed to in emails. Make sure the deliverables that you've agreed upon, what you're going to actually create for them. Payment terms, I would always negotiate those down to no more than 45 days, net 45, because the brands will always be late.
I charge up front. I'm like, we don't, not every case. Like this last one, they needed a really quick turnaround.
Yeah.
So we were like, okay. But for the most part, like you pay us first and then we do it. Or if it's a half and half sometimes.
Yeah, most of the time we're negotiating to get 50% at the signing of contract and then 50% at the end. And I think it's interesting, once you've built these relationships, then they're going to want to pay you on time. Because it's, it's credibility, it's respect.
What about this term that I think is really important in the contract called perpetuity? What does that mean, and what do you negotiate that to for your contracts?
It's interesting that you asked that about. We don't actually see that in too many of our contracts, and I don't know if that's the reason because we have worked with a lot of these brands before, but we're not seeing a lot of like issues. I've never had to negotiate or change any of the terms or under the perpetuity clauses or things like that. There's never been an issue for us. What kind of issues have you seen?
Yeah, for those of you guys who don't know what perpetuity means, it's basically this is how long we get to use these assets that you're creating for us, or your likeness or your image. They can apply it to almost anything. And by default, our experience has been like lifetime, like forever, eternity, and I don't think that's fair because like right now my value is this, but in like 10 years from now, the value might be here. But because I signed this perpetuity contract, like now I'm this, I don't know, big celebrity or brand has grown to something else, and now they can continue to use my likeness from 10 years ago, which in 10 years in the future might be embarrassing for me to see that even up there. So, and then we also have kids, and so because we have kids, we say, no, you can't use this forever because we want them to be able to control how their likeness and image is used as they grow up. So we negotiate to a maximum of 2 years of perpetuity. We usually say 1 is our preference. In our experience, no brand's ever been like, oh, yeah, no problem. Like everyone has been like, yes, we will. That's no problem. We understand. Like the one we just did like a week or 2 ago or something. Like there was unlimited like perpetuity in there. We said, no, we do it to 1 year. They're like, yeah, it's no problem. I'm like, we're probably not going to use it after this next campaign anyway, so it's not a big deal.
I think it's, what I've noticed is that because we're not seeing, like I said, we're not seeing that issue where it's more than, use for the term or for maybe the term plus 1 year. The reason we're not seeing it, I think is we're going through these agencies, these ad agencies.
They're a little more savvy on this.
They're savvy. They've already been doing this for years. They've basically taken the same contract that they've given to celebrities and then just turned it into an influencer contract. Yeah. And that's why most brands will work with an agency, right? Because it's easier. But when a brand comes to you directly, I've noticed that their contracts the red lines are endless.
If you guys are looking for a good lawyer, I'll recommend mine. I'll put a link to his website down below. I mean, not sponsored or anything. I just found him to be really good and helpful in my contracts because he teaches me. He's not just like speaking like technical legalese.
Lawyer talk.
I come out of those conversations feeling like, oh, I learned something. I feel more equipped in my business now because of this conversation. So highly recommend him. Link to him down below. How about the actual asset creation now? Like you've handled the contract, everything's been signed, and then what does it look like for you to actually now fulfill that? To walk us through that process.
Usually the first thing that happens is, they're going to ask for creative treatment for the deliverables, so you'll submit a creative treatment.
What does that mean?
So a creative treatment is basically, if you're contracted to do a YouTube video, a dedicated, so it's fully about the brand and maybe a Instagram post and some Instagram stories, you're going to give a little, paragraph about each, about what they're going to look like, what's the picture going to look like, what's the video going to happen in the video, very top level. 30,000 foot level of what's going to happen, and send that over so that the brand can actually approve it.
So they usually tell you what to do, or do they like, we don't care, do your own thing as long as this product ends up in your video or
No, I wish it was that. I wish it was that. No, it's submitting a creative based on their brief. And then they need to approve that with like their legal team.
Okay.
With the
so they're like, here's what we're looking for, and you're like, okay, here's our idea of how we're going to execute it. That's the creative brief, and then they look at that and they say yes or
what
yes,
about
but
this?
And
exactly.
Then how many back and forths?
Honestly,
when do you is there ever a time where you just cancel the whole thing after that, or is it just more of a little?
There's been like 1 or 2 times where I've just canceled it, and I said, you know what? Let's go ahead and cancel the contract. You guys don't know what you want. I'm not going to create. This is what we agreed to create. I'm not going to create that. That's not even true to us. But yeah, usually it's pretty easy. That's maybe one, two back and forth.
Back and forth.
Yeah.
Then you settle on like, okay, this is the direction I'm going to go with the video.
Yep.
After that, then you go ahead and just shoot it. And how do you guys do that integration then at that point?
Always have a kickoff call. I think it's important after you sign a contract. Always have a call with the brand to go over the brief. So you can talk, voice to voice, even face to face if you want, on a Zoom or something. Talk to them and tell them about the importance of them letting you be you. Because a lot of times there's these expectations that you're going to be exactly what they want you to be. And marketing companies, PR companies have a very commercially marketed feel that they're looking for. Whether they say they are or not, that's just what they're used to creating. So you got to let them know that, look, I'm not creating commercial for you. I'm creating social content that matches my brand, but also highlights the brand that you want me to. I'm creating something that's organic.
I'm lending my voice to you and adding my credibility that I've earned with my audience to your brand.
Exactly. So that's important to be upfront with, because sometimes you'll send something that's great. It's perfectly. There's been a few times, and they come like, well, we thought it was going to be a little bit more like this. I'm like, no, it's a commercial.
Are there any questions that you find yourself regularly needing to ask just for clarification?
I would say the one that I ask a lot, the question I ask a lot is, what is the main message? There'll be key messages that they'll give you. They'll usually be 4 to 5, but what's the main one? If I had to hit one and I had to hit it out the park, what is that main one? Because you could literally take that one message and steer the entire piece of content around it, and then plug in the other ones there when they fit. But there's usually one that's like that main one, and it might help you tell the story really well. When we're shooting a video or we're shooting content, we will overshoot so that we have the content. So you pay for a 2-minute video. I'm going to give you a 2-minute video, maybe 2:10 or whatever. Right. But I might have 20 minutes of footage. Right. But that's just there for maybe edits, or maybe they had some notes. Maybe I have something better to put in there. There's times where we are contracted for 3 stories, 3 frames of IG story, and we might give them 5 because it just flowed better. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And that's okay. Yeah. And they're going to appreciate that. But they're also just going to appreciate high-quality content that matches exactly what you were contracted for.
How do you deliver it to them? Do you just make an unlisted video on YouTube and send it to them? Do you use a different service?
Yeah.
Or what does that look like?
We'll upload it. If it's a YouTube clip or even a video, then we'll upload it, make it unlisted, send it over to them.
And then they give you the thumbs up? Or if you've done all the pre-work right, I'm assuming you get a thumbs up almost every time. Yeah, well, you want to avoid is they're like, no. You're like, I can't reshoot all that and still meet the deadline?
Well, we don't agree to reshoots.
So do you reshoot any revisions?
We agree to, up to 2 revisions.
2 revisions, okay.
But we don't
agree
in
the contract.
Yeah, but we do not agree to reshoots. The possibility of recreating the way you look for something is just unrealistic. The continuity is really different. Yeah, unrealistic. So you end up having to completely reshoot everything. Right. And so we just don't agree to it. Okay. But we've been doing it a long time, and we take it serious, and we're very professional, and we make sure that we don't miss things. But there will be times where you're going to get, the brand's going to come back and say, hey, is there any way you can edit this? And you might maybe edit this. And it might be annoying. It might be like, that doesn't make any sense. But, you pick your battles. If it's a small, minute change, it'll make them happy, and it doesn't really affect you, just make the change. If it's something that changes the essence of what the video is, and and it really changes your style and it becomes something else, push back. I think it's important, again, to hold your ground. And again, this is not personal. This is a professional business-to-business relationship.
So you've published the video. What happens after that? Yeah. Is there any follow-up, or do you send reports, or hey, thank you so much? You send them a little thank you gift, or I don't know. What is your follow-up? What happens after that for you guys?
Yeah, usually it's email. Hey, everything's live. Thank you so much. This was a great partnership. Hope we can continue this and do something different, or continue this one. By the way, invoice will be heading your way. We use bill.com. A few days later, they'll if they haven't asked for analytics, I'll send them over. If it was in the contract. If it wasn't in the contract to send over analytics, then I won't. If they ask me, then I'll still send them to them, but I'm not going to do it if it wasn't in the contract.
Do you ever feel bad when you publish a video and you typically get 50,000 views and this one got 20? Do you oh, guys, I'm so sorry. And they paid you a lot of money for it.
No,
you're suck it up. Sorry.
No, I mean, because it is what it is. People come and watch your content for the native, the content that they're used to. For us, it's a daily vlog. That's what they come for. They come for whatever reason it is. They grab their popcorn, they grab their drinks, they drink their coffee in the morning, they watch our vlog. If it's a branded video, the loyal peeps that we've got will watch it regardless, just because. But some people, they're not there for that, and they might not watch it.
But if the brand comes, like, if they push you a little bit though, and they're like, "Hey man, like, what happened? Only got 20,000 instead of 50,000. We thought we were gonna get 50,000." Do you just say, "Sorry, the contract didn't promise anything"?
No, they don't ever think that. Because I'm upfront in the beginning.
That's good. So you set the managed expectations up front.
Managed expectations up front.
This might under-deliver. No.
No, but I tell them straight up that I recommend, integrations over dedicated videos, because integrations are just right into a normal vlog. It flows. People, will watch it and then move on to the vlog.
Doesn't feel like a commercial.
Exactly. A dedicated video is going to be more commercially. It's obviously about the brand. You got to try to make that as organic as possible. And I let them know up front that these videos, they'll probably be maybe 15, 20, maybe 30% lower in views.
Yeah.
But, 20,000 views compared to 40,000 views is still really good. This is a branded video that just got 20,000 views. That's success.
When it comes to, we've been talking so far about like YouTube perspective, and I know you guys actually do most of your deals on Instagram.
Yeah.
Right? Is there anything different in this conversation that like is unique to Instagram that you would, like, if creators like, because it's very common for YouTube influencers to also have Instagram following. So is there anything different about this conversation that would be unique for the Instagram approach?
No, it's pretty much the same process. I mean, there's not much difference there. I think that the biggest thing is on Instagram, the few different factors that are going to change. Instagram stories. Don't undervalue Instagram stories. You can charge for Instagram stories, and you can charge a decent amount. They're important. People watch, Instagram stories, and they swipe up. So don't ever think that that's because they go away that you shouldn't charge much. Then also link in a bio. Brands are going to ask you to put a link in your bio. We never agreed to do a sole link there. We agreed to throw it in our link tree.
Okay. Yeah.
We're never going to give you the entire real
estate. If you don't know
estate.
what link tree is, it's basically like you put one link in there and then it expands to a whole bunch of links, and you just kind of put it at the top or something.
We'll put it at the top there for whatever the agreed amount of time.
Right.
And because we're not going to sacrifice promoting the other stuff we want to promote just for the brand.
Pricing different between how do you figure that out for Instagram?
Pricing is still under that cost per view, cost per like.
So 20 cents per heart, basically.
Yeah.
Is that what you do? But how do you gauge that for a story?
Stories, we kind of do views still, but we're doing it at a little bit lower rate. I would say that we're doing it like the 10 to 12 cents per view there, just because it does go away.
I got a couple good questions from you guys on Twitter as well as on our YouTube community tab here. So this one's from Welcome to Chickenlandia is her name. And she's like, do you recommend getting contracts from companies when you make a brand deal, or should you supply your own contract to them and make them sign yours?
That's a great question. Absolutely make them send the contract. For one, it's their contract. When they send it to you, it's going to be approved by their legal. You send them a contract, their legal is going to have to approve it. It's just it's going to be a lot longer. The process is going to be a little bit more difficult, and not because your contract won't be good, but your contract's not theirs.
Have you ever bumped into as a smaller business and they just don't have a contract and don't know what one should look like? Would you then supply your own, or do you just go on a gentleman's handshake at that point, or never do gentleman's handshake?
No, we do not. We don't do gentle ladies or gentlemen handshakes.
Not even gentle fist bumps.
No gentle fist bumps, and no. You need a contract. You need an agreement, and I believe that any organization, any business, they have contracts. They have the ability to get a contract. Again, you are the influencer. You're the one that's providing a service for them. They should provide the contract. That's not too much to ask.
Logan Alec on our YouTube community tab asks, how would you find someone and seek them out who would negotiate brand deals for you? What's a fair compensation for them? How would you figure out what's a fair?
Yeah.
Like we talked a little bit about that, but where would you find someone who's maybe more professional at doing just that thing? And at what point is your channel ready for something like that? And what's a fair rate?
Some people might tell you to go, join a YouTube network. I would honestly stay away from that. Not because they're, horrible people or horrible organizations. It's just I don't think that you need that, especially when you're small. I don't think that you need a network taking any of your percentage of your cut, and I don't think you're going to get that return. We have someone that actually brings us brand deals. We don't use them all the time, but she's out there looking for brand deals on a regular basis, and so she is getting 15% of what she brings us, right? So whatever the brand deal is. So she knows what our rates are, so that means she has to negotiate a little bit higher.
Right.
I think that the way you're going to come about finding the right people is use your community. You might very well have someone that's watching you that, is a good negotiator. Honestly, you just need somebody that's a good negotiator. Then you can also reach out to some agencies, some actual traditional talent agencies, and ask if they do work with influencers, and just ask those questions. Well, if you did, how much would you charge, to help me, manage my brand deals? So there's ways there, but never be willing to give more than 15%. I mean, honestly, if I just had to give you a number of where you should be before you even did that, I would say 50,000 subscribers and more, maybe you can start thinking about that. But anything below that, I promise you can handle yourself.
Would you say then just do some Google searches for social media influencer agencies? Or
yeah,
because I've also found like there's some big ones that pop up when you do that.
There is.
But there's also a lot of like just individuals who like actually most of the creators and influencers that I know, they all kind of like use 1 or 2 or 3 different people, and they don't even have a website. They don't have, like, there's no way to get in touch with them other than to have someone else recommend you. It's like word of mouth. It kind of feels like to the viewer, like, but if I don't know those people, how do I get in touch with those people? And it feels like it's a networking thing that they might feel excluded from. And
yeah, you're right. No, it can be that way. It's definitely word of mouth, and sometimes it's about who you know.
Yeah,
right.
It definitely is.
But I think that you can do enough research, or connect with Tim here, and learn about collabing with other influencers, build those relationships. Because that's where you're gonna get advice, tips, and even help.
So the way I did it is, even though I have friends who do that, I found it kind of what you're recommending. Did it on my own for a little while, but then just got a friend of mine who was like, who just like, yeah, train me, I'll do it. Like And the thing that they don't have that some of the agencies and managers have is like they often come with built-in relationships with brands, so they can get you some stuff pretty quickly, and they also have a lot more experience. But you're going to pay a high premium for that, and you're also going to need to be a sizable channel for that. So
and there's no guarantee with that either.
There's still no guarantee. So I prefer to be like, I just want someone who embodies my core values and our beliefs and what we're all about, and representing ourselves to brands as well as to our audience. And I would rather teach someone the skills or figure it out as we go than kind of feel like, well, I don't know anyone, I don't know how to do this, and I got to get to 1 million subs first. The person we hired was just a friend of ours, and he did
smart.
a great job. Armed Scholar asks, does your pricing and tactics change if a brand wants to enter into a long-term sponsorship? Like it's ongoing, would you give a discount if they want to do a series of videos versus just like one?
Yes. We actually just agreed to and are about to contract the largest deal that we have ever done. It's a 6-figure deal over a course of about 7 months. I would say that we probably took about a 25% pay cut on deliverables if we added it all up and charged exactly what we charge per asset thing. But that's okay. That's okay. When you're building long-term partnerships are much better than one-offs or working with a brand one time. Because it's not only good for you and the brand, because now they're building like this relationship, but it's allowing you to say, look at this resume that I did with this corporation, with this large organization. Always be willing to negotiate, always be willing to take a little bit less than what your standard rate is, but have a standard, and then understand that if they want to do a long-term partnership with you, that's a good thing, because it not only can open up doors in that division you're working in, but maybe in other divisions within that organization.
Question from Steve Leto asks, how can you tell if an offer is legit or not? Because sometimes we get those, we're like, I don't know.
Look at the signature block. Look at the email address. If it's coming from a Gmail or a Yahoo, and there's no signature block, personally, I'd probably ignore it.
It says, Dear Sir / Madam.
Definitely when it says Dear Sir / Madam.
Yep.
If it's not personalized to you, or if it's like, so it says Dear Influencer, or if it has a bunch of undisclosed recipients. If you didn't take the time to email me and our brand to work with us, then it's probably not a deal to be made. And if you're not sure, email them back. and say, yes, I'm interested in hearing more about this. What's the compensation? What are you expecting me to do? And if it's legitimate, they're going to come back with decent offer. If they're going to come more, they might come back and say, yeah, we want you to do 7 YouTube videos and we'll pay you $300. And that's not fair for anybody. I don't care if your channel has 5,000 subscribers. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So you'll quickly know. So ask questions. So if you're not sure about the email and you're interested, ask them. What do they want and how much they're going to pay you?
One last question for me.
Okay.
Something that I feel, especially those of you guys who are a little bit more on the I'm getting started with brand deals with us while you're watching this, is especially when you go to those first 1 or 2 that come in, you're like, oh, I could make this thing fit, but I don't know if I should force it. But I really want to take it because I need the money. Yeah. So how do you draw that line when you should say yes and when you should say no, in clear, practical reasoning? How do they make that decision? And
it's a good question. That's a good question. I think that if you see a way to promote this brand or this product or service or whatever it is, not because maybe you don't use it or you don't necessarily need it, but maybe your audience does. If it fits your audience, and what your audience, likes, and again, analytics will tell you kind of what your audience watches outside of you, then maybe you consider it, right? You know what? I'm not necessarily going to use it, but I can tell the story of why it's good for my audience.
So would you promote something that you don't personally use?
It depends. Yeah, like for instance, we worked with Samsung. We're iPhone users. Nothing against Samsung phones, but we're just we're iPhone users. But I know that a lot of our subscribers, our peeps, are Samsung users. A lot of people use them. So it was a good opportunity for us to say, hey, we don't use these. You know we don't, but we know a lot of you do, and these are great phones. I mean, they take good pictures. Like the quality is great.
So you just disclose hey, we don't use this product,
and you guys know we don't use this.
Yeah. And the brand doesn't. You tell the brand that up front.
Yeah, they know that up front but they see the value in us, a non Android user, talking about their product to people that do use them.
Do you get called a sellout for that or anything? Or?
No, because we're up front. But I think that it's just important to, if it feels wrong, it feels like something that you don't want to do, or it's going to turn your audience off, then it's better to say no. I know the money's enticing, but
go with your gut. If there's any sort of twinge, you're like, I could force the square peg into the round hole.
Yeah.
Don't. Because
turn your audience off.
Exactly. You're taking a temporary reward for a long-term sacrifice.
You're taking a Band-Aid that's not big enough for the scar that you're going to have. So
yeah, it damages the trust and relationship you have with your audience.
Absolutely.
And is there any amount of money that's worth that? I don't think so, but there might be. Everyone's got a price, I guess. So.
Yeah, I don't know. We've never been presented one that was worth it at that point. But staying true to your brand, staying true to the kind of content you create is gonna benefit you in the long run.
Yeah, the filter I kind of think of is this something that, one, I can recommend, and two, for me personally, I want to have used it before I just recommend it. You used the phone you could tell it took good pictures.
Yeah, we filmed a little video with it. Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes I get hey, Tim, will you promote our royalty-free music library to other creators? There was one that I used, and they kept coming up getting, I'm glad I used it first because every single one's a content ID match.
Wow.
And I was like, ooh, if I had just promoted this without testing it first, I would have lost a lot of credibility with my audience. So I always test it, use it. I don't guarantee. I'm send me the product. I'll check it out, and if it works out and we actually use it, then I'll promote it. But then my recommendation will have more credibility to it, because I actually used it and can talk more authoritatively about it. So if at any point something comes up and I'm like, yeah, this could work, but I don't really know, then I will just I'll just let it go.
Smart.
So
and most of the time you don't ever regret it. Most of the time you're like, you know what? Yeah. I'm glad I didn't do that. Yeah.
I think one of the best ways to learn how to do a lot of this stuff is to see it actually played out and see it actually in action. So we put together a short playlist. You can click right over there to go to some of Gay Babe TV's best in brand integrations and look at how they do it. Pay attention to how they integrate the product, how they pitch it, and how natural it is, and take some tips, ideas by watching it in action. So click that playlist over there. You can find a link to their channel also down below, and he'll see you in that next video.
That's right.